First off, warning, this video will contain full-on spoilers for Jojolion, so if you don't want spoilers, click off this video. Alright, so today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite characters in Jojos Bizarre Adventure, and one overhated by many, Tooru. In my opinion, Tooru is one of the greatest antagonists I've ever seen in anime manga, on par with Funny Valentine, and let me explain why. First, you look at what makes a villain good. Villains or antagonists are not defined by their screen time, but in general defined by how good they are as an individual character and how well they oppose the main character and affect the overall story. Take Katakuri from One Piece and Chrollo from Hunter x Hunter. Those are two major antagonists who are loved by many despite having short screen time compared to other great and well-written anime manga villains. Now that's out of the way, I want to talk about Jojolion and why Tooru works so well in the context of the story. One major thing with Jojolion is that it's not structured like other previous parts of JoJo's. In fact, that it is a story with multiple driving forces, all going for one fruit, compared to other parts that had one grand central antagonist who appeared for most of the part. Tooru comes at a late time, but it's for a reason. Now, one can argue he could have been more clearly foreshadowed, but many aspects of his character, including the concept of the whole flow itself, and even certain details about how Holly had man-made holes in her head, were subtly shown throughout the part. Tooru is revealed as a twist villain because the whole mystery of the Wonder Review arc relies on the fact that you do not know the user. Now let's get on to his dynamic in opposition with Josuke, which is, in my opinion, the best and most detailed protagonist and villain and dynamic in JoJo's. First, we start off with Josuke, a man who was born without memories, who cared for Yasuo and tried to discover his own identity. A man whose bond with his mother was so strong it literally carried across lifetimes. This ultimately powered his journey and gave him the ability to create miracles, as in go beyond, that could overcome the curses placed in the town of Morio. A man who is truthful and never deceits anyone. A man who thinks no matter what memories he might have, that bond created will go beyond his memories, and that your past doesn't define who you want to be. Now we look at Tooru, a man who died holding on to his last memory, who manipulated Yasuo and stole the identity of another, whose bond with his mother was never established, so he could never have any true feeling of love. And I'll expand upon this later. Calamities, which you could almost call curses, plague Morio, a man who is a trickster and deceived the world, a man who values memories and believes that they are the only thing that holds importance and ultimately completes a person. Both Josuke and Tooru were born out of the ground, and they were shaped by the world around them in two separate ways, paralleling each other so well. Not to mention, the head doctor uses medicine for his own gain, while Kira Yoshikage used medicine to help others. Their dynamic is so strong it goes even further into their past and ultimate personalities, or identities. Now, let me move on to Tooru's impact on Jojolion. Tooru's impact on Jojolion is amazing, and it is really evident if we take a look at the three main characters leading up to the Wonder Review arc. First, take Josuke, where Tooru appeared to have experimented on his mother, Holly, ultimately causing Josuke's entire character to exist and creating the central conflict of Jojolion. Second, take Yasuo, who he affected as a young child and took advantage of her to kill many innocent people. Thirdly, take Mamazuku, which Tooru directly affected by killing his father in a calamity. When Rai knew something was wrong, he couldn't do anything about it because the head doctor had already come and ravaged his father's orchard, killing him. Now, all three of the central characters of Jojolion had been directly affected by Tooru, along with even the Higashikatas, but more specifically on Jobin, whose entire plan to get the fruit failed in his resulting demise. Now I'll move on to Tooru's character. Tooru himself is a rock human, and they are abandoned by their mothers at birth and left in the wild, while they hang onto a wasp and essentially take over the colony. They then grow up spontaneously at 17 years of age, killing all the wasps in their well. This type of upbringing will obviously mentally damage said rock humans, and because of this, they develop antisocial tendencies. They then leech onto society and blend into regular humans. Regular humans not acknowledging their existence, which would also play a role onto them trying to break away from society. This sociopathic nature is in fact a direct result of them lacking motherly love as children, which is displayed so well in how Tooru has issues with Yasuo and caring for her. On one hand, he wants to genuinely save her, but on the other, it seems like he doesn't care about her at all. This inconsistency is on purpose, and it is showing the trouble Tooru has for loving other beings and not simply seeing them as memories. Tooru has developed a lot during his 30-something chapter stay. He is usually shown as tough, but however it's his facade. He seems mature and acts like an old man. It is a response to when he was rejected by smartphone companies because he looked too young for his idea. Hence why Wonder of You invested. It's to act like an old person so he can have access to the Lokaka. Over time, his facade wears off little by little. His famous copy pasta signifies his facade wearing off, and I'll read it to you. So personally, this is the first time this has ever happened. So I'm a bit surprised. Only a centimeter away. I mean, I don't think there's ever been someone who's gotten that close to me without calamity occurring. I'm not really sure what happens at 1 centimeter away because it's my first time. I don't really understand it either. Seriously. But in the flow of calamity, there's nobody who can attack me. Not a single person. That I know for sure. Wonder of You. This quote signifies that whenever he has no place to go, he becomes extremely paranoid, but also calm and collected, which is kind of a paradox, but it also makes sense. He himself says that it is his first time. Wonder of You being bypassed by Josuke can be interpreted by Toru's facade wearing off. Tooru is essentially fake it until you make it. Tooru, while fighting Josuke, understood the bond between one's mother and child, and in his death, he desired it. During his death, he showed the 5 stages of grief. He first showed denial when the exchange started. He knew the exchange was in his favor, but he then becomes angry due to Kato feeding the wasp sap to Tsurugi and thus causing the rock disease to transfer over to Tooru. He then bargains with Kato. He bargains that the Rokakakai is more important than him, and he doesn't want it to be destroyed. Even if he dies, he faces depression on the verge of death, not wanting to die and asking Yasuo to help him. He then accepts his death, reaching out to the wasp as he was longing for motherly love. His death is very tragic yet somewhat ironic considering he died pursuing the fruit while killing everyone that pursued him. Alright, let's move on to his symbolism. So, his stand, Wonder of You. The intent to pursue Tooru or the stand would create freak accidents or calamities. His design, agree. It's bowler hat and suit. With that aside, the meaning of Rene Magritte's painting is that it takes out the emotion of something. Maybe it is happiness or sadness that such a man in his paintings cannot have his face shown. What if it's a monster or a lovely man that would be nice and compassionate to everyone else? What Rene Magritte is trying to do is make us pursue the painting, which is what Wonder of You's ability revolves around. We don't know the head doctor's true form or face because we cannot pursue him, which is what Rene Magritte's paintings essentially describes. And what Araki did with the emotions aspect is that we will never, at the same time, not trying to be pursued. So the most important symbolism that Araki put into it was very surprising was the Dajjal. Dajjal is the Antichrist of Islam and symbolizes him a lot. So essentially, Dajjal has one eye. His right eye is blinded and he can only see with his left eye with the words Kuffar or non-believer on his forehead. There are many panels showing his left eye. His stand, she now fell from heaven, being an endless calamity. In Buddhism, it is a common belief and that we will reach nirvana. And nirvana is that we must relieve our worldly desires and feelings, which is what Josuke does, which counters Wonder of You, which dictates the logic of the world, stated by Wonder of You himself. Nirvana would counter it because it doesn't exist in this world, and endless calamity is essentially the hell. Devoid of motherly love, his bare hatred for humans ever grew. The theme of karma in the Steel Ball Run verse is particularly strong. Tooru having indirectly or directly created Josuke His own flow of calamity killed him, so basically water slash the flow of calamity screwed him over. Alright, now time for one of the most surprising parts of Tooru. Tooru being an Ubermensch. What is an Ubermensch? The Ubermensch represents a shift from the otherworldly Christian values and benefits the grounded human ideal. The Ubermensch try to make this world a better place by creating their own moral values than what people abide by the Judeo-Christian moral value, and that is exactly what Tooru does. It is like he's doing something bad right now to benefit the future of rocket humans. His moral value is that he must do everything to liberate his oppressed people. They go through 3 stages. Number 1, the camel. The camel signifies the acceptance of society now. Tooru is able to be with the flow of things, which is a big theme in Jojolian. The camel has the burden of everything, just as Tooru got rejected by smartphone companies and turned out to be a doctor. The camel may be tired from holding the burden, so it tries to break away, which leads on to the next step. Number 2, the lion. The lion is essentially symbolizing when society tells you to do something, you do not follow it and do the opposite. The leader of society will force their values onto them, but the lion will say no. Also, the lion does not accept a turn occurrence. This step is what leads to an Ubermensch. It shows how one wants to break away from society. Tooru does the exact same thing, as he wants to break away from society and topple the societal hierarchy to benefit his species, the child. It symbolizes acceptance for who you are. You accept you have to hurt people to achieve moral status or custom moral value. Tooru accepts he has to hurt others to get to his goal. In the end, all Tooru believed were in dreams and memories, and I hope that people remember that Tooru is an amazing antagonist and not as a last-ditch effort as a main villain. Because clearly, major effort was put into making his character, and he has tremendous amount of depth, just being more subtle than previous villains.